Okay, unfortunately, the class yesterday, the audio didn't come out for some reason. So I apologize to our viewers online, missing the end of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, chapter 618. At any rate, we are continuing back to the Gemara itself. And the Gemara, having discussed someone who's sick on Yom Kippur and how and when one can eat, and that was the halachas that we just concluded learning yesterday. The Mishnah mentioned a sickness called Bulmus, which the Shulchan Aruch also mentioned. Bulmus, as Rashi describes it, is a sickness that comes as the result of extreme hunger. And one of the symptoms, or the primary symptom of telling us whether the person is healed or not, is vision. And having raised this sickness, Gemara now discusses methods of dealing with it. And that's going to lead into a little discussion about that and some stories. And then after that, the Gemara is going to talk about someone who was bitten by a crazy dog, which is another thing that causes someone to get sick, as you mentioned, which rabies, right? You mentioned that, rabies. And so it's going to be a little bit of discussion on that, and then we're going to get back to Yom Kippur. And as we'll see, the primary healing method for this bulmus is to eat honey. So it's apropos leading up to Rosh Hashanah. All right, so we're on Pei Gimel Amud Beis, 83b, and the line starts with the word ba'atzitz, second word shehu, third word nakuv, and then there's a taf resh. It's about a quarter from the top, a little bit less than a quarter from the top. It's in a narrow set of lines. It's taf resh, in the middle of the line. Tan Rabbanan. You have it? Okay, Tan Rabbanan, our sages taught. Misha Achzei Bulmus, one who's been possessed or has come down with Bulmus. Machil and I say dvash should be fed honey. V'chol min mesika and all kinds of sweets. Shat dvash for honey, v'chol min mesika and all kinds of sweets. Me'idin mar einim shel adam, they brighten the light in one's eyes and they help restore the vision. Now, even though we don't have a proof for this idea that honey, meaning a scriptural proof, we don't have a scriptural proof for this idea that honey heals bulmus. Nonetheless, we have a allusion to it. It's alluded to in the verse. How so? Because this is, the context here is a battle that Shaul and his son Yonasan are fighting against the Philistine, and Yonasan is a little defiant. He fights the battle on his own, and then after the battle, or during that day of the battle, Shaul instructs that his men don't eat anything until he wipes out his enemies. It was kind of his way of motivating them to keep on fighting and not get distracted by eating. And Yonasan defies it and eats anyway, and tells, right, he took honey. Anyway, they come upon a honey field and he eats honey, and the soldiers say, don't you know your father said not to? And he said, well, it was a mistake. He should have told them to eat, and they would have won the battle even quicker. So in that statement where he tells the people that they should have eaten, his father should have instructed them to eat, he says, Ru'una ki udu einai. Don't you see now that my eyes have been lit up? Because I've ate a little bit of this honey, and you guys should have done the same. Okay, so this is kind of an allusion to the fact that honey is healing to the eyes. The Gemara asks, why are you saying it's not a proof and only an illusion? It seems to be a straight up proof. He said, my eyes lit up because I ate the honey. So why are you saying it's only a illusion? It seems to be a straight up proof. Eat honey and your eyes will light up. You'll be able to see better. Says the Gemara, the reason is the Hasam la Bulmus achze. Yonasan wasn't possessed by Bulmus. He was just, he was a healthy person, and he got more energy and his vision was sharper because of the honey. But this is no proof that it'll work for the sickness called Bulmus. But we see that it works for the symptoms. So it kind of hints to the fact that if your vision is impaired as a result of Bulmus, in the case of the Gemara, then take some honey and it'll heal. Okay. This is what the Gemara says here. That was Mishnaic age text. Now we have the commentary from the Gemara's age. Amar Abaye says, Lo Shanu, this is only true after you've eaten something. So eat something and then take honey. Yeah, it kind of, I am no nutritionist, and I would love to see a nutritionist comment on this, but it seems to me that like when you have sweets and honey, it gives like an energy boost, like a quick energy boost, but that doesn't work if you don't have food in you. Right? If you're weak and you eat something, just to give yourself some like carb, something to fill up your stomach, and you're still low on energy, even though even though you're not hungry anymore. And then you take some sugar, now you've got like a burst of energy. So maybe that's what Abaye is saying, that first eat something and then get some honey to give you an extra boost. Maybe. But if someone eats the honey before eating, it just opens up your appetite and makes you want to eat more. And the whole bulmus came from the result of extreme hunger, and here you're taking honey and getting hungrier. Yeah, we've seen that after the Second World War, unfortunately. Yeah. Right. So. Yeah, you're right. So, right. I see what you're saying. Right. So coming from extreme hunger and eating right away too much is definitely unhealthy. We've seen that after the war, after Second World War, unfortunately. But I'm not so convinced, and I'm learning the stories today. I'm not so convinced that it's actually bulimia. Because we're going to see stories of someone walking down the street and get possessed by bulmus. You don't get possessed by bulimia. It happens gradually over a long time because it's a stomach issue, but it's partially also psychological. It takes time. This is just it seems to be like a physiological reaction to not eating. So I don't know what this is, but it doesn't seem to me to be bulimia. But nonetheless, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying in terms of eating a full meal when you're starving. So maybe it doesn't mean to eat a full meal, but to eat something. I don't know. Anyway, I just wonder what this actual bulmus is. It would be interesting to know. But it seems from the Gemara stories, as we're going to see, that it existed for quite a while, and we're going to hear cross-generationally. Like you hear Abaye talking about it in Gemara's age, you had the Mishnah talking about it in the Mishnaic age, so you're talking about a few hundred-year difference. It's centuries. Yeah, but losing vision, and then we had something else. There was another symptom we saw also last time. There's another symptom. No. Sorry? Oh, taste. That's right. Lack of taste. That was it. Loss of taste. There's another one. Yeah. So maybe it's just all the senses start closing down. Anyway. Yeah, but we're going to see that people had energy even when they eat. People were able to do things even after they had bulmus. Let's see all the stories and then we'll see, because there's quite a few stories here. Okay, so Abaye said, honey eating for bulmus is only after you've eaten something. But before you eat something, it just opens up the appetite more, and now you're even hungrier. The Ksiv, the verse reads, this is King David HaMelech, when he is in battle. And during one of these battles, he's surrounded and he's running and he's worried about people attacking him. And he travels out, does a little scouting mission. And during a scouting mission, Ish Mitzri, to find an Egyptian man who turns out to be a slave, and the slave he's a runaway slave, or a slave that has actually his master abandoned him. And he met this Egyptian Besada in the field. And they brought him El David to David. They gave him bread. They gave this Egyptian boy, this Egyptian ex-slave, they gave him bread. They gave him food. They gave him to drink mayim water. And they gave him like a honey dish. The shnei tzimukim and 2 sweets to go along with it. I was going to say dried out fruit. Tzimukim is usually dried out fruit, but raisins, yeah. So he ate, and his spirit restored to him because this guy had not eaten or drank 3 days and 3 nights. Okay, so here you see, anyway, they gave him food because they wanted information out of him. But here you see that they first gave him bread, then they gave him to eat and drink, and then they gave him honey. So here's a proof for Abaye that it's best if the guy hadn't eaten in 3 days. So either he has bulmus or he's close to bulmus. But here we see that honey comes after food. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. Rav Nachman said in the name of Shmuel, Misha Achse Bulmus, one who's been possessed by Bulmus, Machin Leise Alya B'dvash. You give him a Alya is a sheep's tail, which is a very fatty piece of meat. You give that to him dipped in honey. It seems like they want to give him a lot of rich food to get him to get high dose of nutrient very quickly. So they give him a rich food. So in Rav Nachman said in Mishmor, you give him fat meat, which is this tail of the sheep dipped in honey. Okay. Rabbi Huna, son of Rabbi Yeshua, said, even pure flour in honey, meaning as long as you have some substance to get the honey in, it doesn't have to be this fatty meat. It could even just be flour, which is much more basic food. Papa says you can go even more basic. Even flour made of barley, which is bedivsha in honey, which is usually not meant for human consumption. Barley is usually for animal consumption. Yet, even this cheap barley with honey is good for bulmus. Okay, now we get the story. Amar Rav Yochanan says, see, these people all lived in different times. Abaye lived later, Rabbi Yochanan lived in the middle, Rav Nachman and Rav Shmuel, Rav Nachman and Rav Papa lived between Rabbi Yochanan and Abaye, and then you had before the Mishnaic age talking about it. So this Bulmus thing must have lasted for centuries, and it seemed to be not an uncommon thing. It just goes to show. I mean, if it comes if it comes as a result of hunger, it means people were hungry a lot. Just gives you an idea. It's quite something. It's like a historical record. These stories and these things, I find it fascinating. Okay, so Rechman said, once I was possessed by Bulmus, and I ran to the eastern side of a fig tree, and I ate a fig there. The kiyamti, and I fulfilled the verse, ba'atzmi, with myself, wisdom gives life to the one who has it. So what does this have to do with anything? The point is he's saying that I had quick thinking, and I ran to the eastern side of a date. You know, it's because it's eaten dates, which is high in honey, right? Land flowing of milk and honey. The honey there is not talking about honey from a bee. It's talking about date honey. I'm sorry. No, that's right. But the tainous figs. Nonetheless, it's actually interesting because the story before, where they found a field of honey, probably means date honey, not actual bee honey. But at any rate, so he has to run to get a high sugary fruit. So he ran to a date tree. But he was quick thinking and went to the eastern side. And that was the wisdom that he had that gave him life. Now, why is it wise to go to the east side? Explains the Gemara. Rav Yosef explains. It's te'ena. One who wants to truly taste what a good fresh date is like, should pick a date from the eastern side of the tree. Shenema, as the verse reads, Meged Tvois Shemesh. Meged, it actually explains, it means like the delicacies. The delicacies of the produce, in this case the date, is closer to the sun. And because in the morning, the sun is in the east, so the stronger sun is on the eastern side of the tree, and therefore it's better and nicer and juicier fruit. And therefore, when Rabbi Yochanan wanted to quickly get a date to save himself from Bulmus, he ran to the eastern side, and that was the wisdom that saved him. All right. Another story. Rabbi Huda Rabbi Yossi, sorry? Rabbi Yochanan was hit by Bulmus, yes. And now we're going to have a different generation of people who were hit by Bulmus as well. So I'm saying this seems to be, I don't know if it's common, but it seems to be not infrequent. For the Bulmus? What did you look at the art scroll? They also said bulimia? I don't know the bulimia. This is what bulimia is. And bulimia is not healed by having a date. Bulimia is healed by therapy for over some time. But date, this seems to be like I'm struck by Bulmus, grab a date, I'm good. Right? Because that's what the Gemara says in Yom Kippur. You give him food until his vision returns, and now he's good. That's not the case for a bulimic patient. At least look, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a doctor, I have no idea. But this is, obviously, all the viewers and listeners are welcome to disagree or to offer insight. Okay, so let's see another story. Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi were traveling along the way. Bulmus, they both got struck by Bulmus. I'm sorry, Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Huda got struck by Bulmus, not Rabbi Yossi. So one of the two of them gets Bulmus while traveling. So so his life is in danger. So he overpowered a shepherd that he found, and and ate his bread. Break all the rules. Question of life and death. See, this is not something that happens to bulimic, I don't think. And it's also interesting, the guy is sick from some kind of starvation, and he's strong enough to overpower and grab the bread from a shepherd, which I imagine is something like survival instinct kicks in. You have no choice. You see some bread, you just got to take it. Unfortunately, we have stories like that from the Holocaust, where people are so desperate that strength that people don't have when they're healthy, people found even in dire conditions. Anyway, so Rabbi Huda gets Bulmus, and he sees a shepherd, grabs his bread. Rabbi Yossi says to him, you stole from the shepherd. Like, what'd you just do? Okay, no comment. When they arrive in town, then Bulmus, Rabbi Yossi, the other companion, Rabbi Yossi got struck by Bulmus. And his companion. So on the way, Yehuda gets struck by Bulmus. He grabs bread from the local shepherd. I don't know. Maybe it's viral, yeah. And then they get to town, and the other one gets the Bulmus. So Adrunu Balgi Vitzai, the people of the town, as Rashi tells us, the people of the town surrounded him with all kinds of honey and sweet dishes of good food to feed him, because Rabbi Yossi is struck by Bulmus. We got to go help him, right? So Amar Le, Rabbi Yehuda, turns to his friend Rabbi Yossi and says, Anika Pakte Taraya, I stole from one shepherd, Ba'ata, and you Kapakta Ta'ir Kula, you stole from the whole city because they'll come running out to give you food. End of story. Okay, one more story for today, and then God willing, on Monday we'll get to the business with the rabies, or as the Gemara calls it, being bitten by a crazy dog. Translating literally. Okay, so another story. This is a fascinating story, and it has some. At least one part of it is used in a Hasidic context, although I'm sure all these stories could be explained on deeper levels. Okay, Vesu, further stated, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Huda, and Rabbi Yossi have a cause were traveling along the way. Rabbi Meir have a dayak b'shma. Rabbi Meir was known to be precise and point out people's names. Now, this little line is what has Hasidic meaning. As we learn in part 2 of Tanya, chapter 1, the Alter explains, in Shaykh Mun, the Alter explains how God creates the world through divine word, through the words. And there he explains this at length. I'm not going to get into the entire explanation because it's not our topic now. But there he says that the name that everything is called upon in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Holy Language, that is its source of life. So the source of life for all tables in the world is from the letters Shin, Lamed, Ches, Nun, Shulchan. The source of life for all chairs in the world is the 3 letters Kaf, Samach, Aleph, Kisei. And the same, that doesn't say this explicitly, but the Rebbe would say the same thing is true of names, of people's names, and the Rebbe would cite to this Gemara. If you may have a dayak b'shma, the name indicates something about them, because the name of Lashon HaKodesh, it's like the spiritual gene code of that person, giving him the divine energy for everything, not just a person. Same thing true that we would say about names in Torah, like the name of a parsha, even though you would think it's just for convenience, it's the first word of the parsha, the first few words of the parsha. Nonetheless, it has significance because the name that it's called in Lashon HaKodesh, that's its energy. Okay, and the Rebbe himself and the Rebbe's father, even more so, made all kinds of Torahs out of the names of people and places and locations. Just we have a few minutes, just quickly. It's interesting. Just the first thing is, I think I mentioned this before. Rebbe's father was in jail by the Soviets for matzah, for all kinds of Jewish stuff that he was doing, and he wrote a Shema. He wrote a diary in which he states, my name is Levi Yitzchak ben Zelda Rachel. I think his mother's name was Zelda Rachel, and he went on to give a whole explanation based on his name, based on the locations of his prisons, based on his mother's name, based on all the gematrias, based on the dates and when he was arrested, based on the dates of when he was transferred from one jail to another jail, explaining Al Pi Kabbalah, based on Kabbalistic reasons why it happened to him. I mean, he's being beaten, tortured, and starving, and it's not what he's concerned about. He's concerned about the Kabbalah, to explain Kabbalistically why it is that all this stuff's happening to him. A whole explanation to sweeten the gvudas, to sweeten the severities that are attached to associated to his personality, apparently. That's what he writes. Sorry? From the letters of his name, from the numbers of his name, from the dates of his this and this. It's one story. Another story is the Rebbe, before the Rebbe became Rebbe in 1946, he was already living in America for some 8 years already, or for 6 years actually. And then he came to America in 1940. He's living in America for some years already, and his mother was still in Russia with his father. And once his father passed away, and there was an opening for Jews to get out of Russia because the Russians were allowing people with Polish passports to get out, so people were forging Polish passports and escaping Russia. So his mother came out of Russia, and like most Chassidim, including my father's mother and her family, her parents and her siblings, they went to Paris. Now the Rebbe went from New York to Paris to pick up his mother and bring her to New York. And the Rebbe spent some time, I think even over Pesach, in Paris in Tafshin Vov, 1946. And during that time, that's the first time many of these Chassidim got to know who the Rebbe was. There was a very private person, and he lived in the big city as opposed to the small little towns where most of the Chassidim lived. And people didn't really know who the Rebbe was. You know, they knew he was the Rebbe's son-in-law, the current Rebbe's son-in-law, but they didn't really know who he was as a person. And many of the Chassidim got to know him then, including my great-grandfather, and heard quite a few stories from my great-uncle of what happened with my great-grandfather there with the Rebbe. So one incident is like this, related to this Gemara. The night before the Rebbe went back home with his mother to New York, they made a Farbrengen, a Sudat Preda, like a farewell gathering. Many people from the city came, and then after the official ceremony was over, the Chassidim stayed and they Farbrengen. And the Rebbe went like this. The Rebbe said, now that it's a Chassidish Farbrengen, I can tell you the following. And everyone went around the table and told everybody, based on your name, what your neshama is, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and that's why Kabbalah you're sitting next to that person because you need to be fixed from this thing to that thing, and went around the table like this, and everybody's mouth, his jaw dropped like to the floor, because he's nailing everybody exactly on their strengths and their weaknesses, based on their name, based on where they came from, based on where they're going, and based on their parents' names and their birth dates. I mean, like stuff like that you don't see on a regular thing. So this is something that I've heard of. And I can ask my father the details. He might even remember what they ever told my great-grandfather. At least some of what they ever told him in terms of his name and what his personality is like. At any rate, all this comes from this Gemara, which says, Meir Daik Bishma. So let's learn this story. So Meir was medayik. He was point out in particular about people's names. But Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi like have a Daik Bishma. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi were not so particular about names. But the three of them are traveling, Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi. Excuse me. When they came to this location, some location, there was a host who was going to give them lodging. Or he offered lodging. He was a businessman offering lodging. No, so they were seeking out. They were seeking out lodging. That's what I said. They were looking for a place to stay. And they found a certain person. And Yavalu, and this person gave it to them. He said, here, I'll give you a place to stay. Amar lahu. So the person, the landlord, said to them, Amru loy. The Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda and Meir asked the innkeeper, let's just say, Ma shimcha, what's your name? Amar lahu, he said, my name is Kidor. Amar Meir said, Shmamina, this implies to me, Adam Rashu, this guy is a wicked person. His name is Kidor, he's wicked. Why? The verse reads, Kidor tapuche seimatz, pasuk in Devarim, for they are a generation that is full of upheaval. And there it says, Kidor, for the generation, or because the generation. So combining the two words, Kidor, that's this guy's name, Kidor. Therefore, his name must not be a good guy. Okay? So Meir is very suspicious. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi were not so particular about names. They're not so suspicious. He said, another innkeeper like any other innkeeper in the world. So Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, Ishtamid lekisau. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, they gave him their pouch, their purse to hold, their wallet. But Rabbi Meir loy ashtam lekisei. Rabbi Meir did not give him his wallet because he's suspicious. So what did he do with his wallet? I guess he figured he'll put it in the place where the guy's never going to look for it. Also, he went. He put it on top of the grave of the landlord's father. I guess he's buried in the backyard there. So he went and put his wallet there. Or he put it into there. He buried it there. Yeah. Yeah, by the grave, it's a great hiding place. No one's going to go dig it up. I don't know if he has to dig down 6 feet. He could have just dug a few inches and put it in. Okay, the father of the innkeeper appeared to the innkeeper in a dream and told him, Tashakal Sika Kisa, go take the pouch, the Monach Aresha Dahu Gavra, that's lying on top of my head. He speaks in the third person, he's sitting on top of that head, meaning his own person, himself. So the father comes to the son in the dream and says, there's a wallet in my head, go take it. Amar Lamach, the next day, Amar Lahu, the innkeeper, obviously not so clever, tells the three of them, this is what I saw in my dream. I saw my father come to me and tell me to go take a wallet that's buried with him, it's on top of his head, literally. Amri, so the three of them, realizing what happened, they told him, okay, dreams. I guess he came to them because they're scholars and he wanted to get their opinion about the relevance of dreams. But they knew that there's a wallet there, one of Rameir's wallet. So they told him, dreams that you have on Friday night, they don't count. Rashi tells us it was Friday night. They don't count. Anyway, obviously it's a dream like any other dream, and if it counts, it counts. But they just basically told him to brush him off. Okay, so what do we do now? Azra Meir, the Naitre Kula Yoma. Meir went and basically stayed by the grave all Shabbos, making sure that no one takes his wallet, just protecting it. The Iser and protected it. Lamachar, the next day, Amrulai, they said to him, Rabbi Huda and Rabbi said to the owner, how long Kisam, give us back our wallets? Amalahu, he told them, you never gave me your wallets, never happened. Complete denial. Amalahu Rameir, so Rabbi Huda and Rabbi turned to Rameir, I'm sorry, Rameir told Rabbi Huda and Rabbi, why weren't you guys particular about the name? I told you this is a problem, this guy's a problem. Amrulay, so Rabbi Huda and Rabbi said, I'm Muslim, why didn't you tell us? Mar, why didn't you tell us that you know for sure this guy is bad? Amar Lahu, so Rameir responded, he said, look, I was suspicious. I wasn't 100% certain this guy's an evil guy. I was suspicious. So I didn't really say with certainty to you, this guy's definitely bad. But you guys should have been pointing at the name and realizing something is up. Okay, so now they got their wallet back. What do they do? Okay, Mashru, they took him. And they brought him to a restaurant, store, literally. They brought him to some food store. They brought him to a restaurant, so like a restaurant kind of thing. So he has wine and they're taking him out for breakfast. They didn't drag him by the feet. They're taking him out for lunch, and they gave him wine, they gave him a meal, and in the course of the meal, they saw lentils or lentil soup on his mustache. So Ozlu, they went ahead, and they gave a sign. That's correct. No. That was just, they used this as a sign. You'll see. So he had lentils stuck. They saw lentils on it. Well, I don't know if he ate it before the meal or maybe at the meal. Doesn't say that he had it at home. No. Doesn't say he ate it at home. It could be, 1 second, you'll see. It could be that he ate it by the restaurant. He had lentils. 1 second, you'll see. That's right. 1 second. So he had lentils, not necessarily at home. But they went back, and they gave a sign to the wife. And they said, your husband said to give us the wallets. And what's the proof? Because you're going to see him with lentils. Or maybe the reverse. He ate lentils already, and they saw the lentils on him, and they told him, what's the sign that he had lentils for breakfast this morning? That he ate the lentils this morning. Anyway, the Shakul Kusayu, she gave them their wallets. Because it was the right sign. Hitaka had lentils that morning. Now you're right, they didn't see it later. He ate lentils earlier, and they saw the lentils when they took him to the store to give him wine, and they went back to the wife and said, look, your husband said to give us the wallets, and the proof is that he had lentils this morning. And she's like, oh yeah, Hitaka did have lentils this morning. They gave him back the wallets. Yeah. So V'aisu, he comes home. And V'aisu, when they went off, Rabbi Huda and Rabbi went off, Rabbi Meir, they all went off, they all have their wallets, everybody's happy. Azal Iu, this man, Kedar, comes back home, and he hears from his wife what happened. And he kills his wife. Because she gave away the wallets that he had so cleverly stole. Hainu, it's not, and we conclude with this. This is the meaning of what the Mishnah says. Ma'im Rishonim, water that a person washes before he eats. If a person doesn't do that, hachilu basar chazer. He is fed non-kosher meat, pig's meat, bacon. The story there is that Rashi tells us that there's a Jewish butcher who would sell kosher meat to kosher customers and non-kosher meat to non-kosher customers, or non-Jewish customers. And one day, a Jewish guy walks into the store and didn't wash, just sat down to eat, and didn't wash. It's because he didn't wash, the guy figured he's not Jewish and fed him pork. So, yeah, restaurant, yeah. And the guy fed it. He didn't wash his hands for the meals. He said, "Oh, this guy's not Jewish," and gave him non-kosher meat, gave him pig meat. So here we see that washing one's hands before saved the person, or would save someone from eating, God forbid, non-kosher meat like that. And washing one's hands at the end of one meal, hargos hanefesh, killed a person. How's that? Washing one's hands at the end of the meal saves a person from death. Oh no, well that's one story, but here the Gemara is pointing that's true, generally speaking, the salt issue. That's the original problem. But here's another thing, that's only washing the fingers, so that you don't touch your eyes with salt, right? But here's another element. When people wash their hands by machranim, you also go like this, right? And had that guy done that, he wouldn't have had lentils on his mustache, and they wouldn't have had a sign, and he wouldn't have gone and killed his wife. This is what the Gemara says. The Gemara's final comment is, the end is, Habadaika Bishma. Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi, after this, they started to be particular about people's names. And in fact, they came to somebody's house once, lodging. The Shmei Bala, this guy's name was Bala, the innkeeper. And they didn't go to his inn. Because Amri, they said, Shmamina must be Rasha, who is wicked. Because the verse reads, we say to the one who is worn out of idolatry. The word Bala is the word worn out, which is what this guy's name is. What did I say? Adultery, not adultery. Adultery, like as in, a sin of proclivities. And the Gemara brings two. For example, after I've been worn out from, it's been to me a joy or an enjoyment. As the Gemara means to say, I become old and worn out from so much enjoyment, as it were, from so much proclivity. So here, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda learned from Rabbi Meir that they start to become particular about people's names and wouldn't stay in someone's inn if the name didn't match up. So that's for today's discussion with the stories, all related to this Bulmus situation. Even though Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Meir, they're traveling, didn't have any Bulmus. But because we mentioned before a story of Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi who did get Bulmus, we mentioned the story of Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Meir traveling, and we had this whole interesting story about being particular names. God willing, Monday we get to rabies. We won't get rabies. We get to the Gemara discussing the issue of rabies. Okay, wonderful day and a good Ner Shabbos.